Now I'm going to invite Rob back to tell us about the characteristics of this wetland. Thanks, Rob.
This is an amazing wetland. As I mentioned earlier, it is a coastal wetland, and it's a very extensive one. This is Boundary Bay, and it's maybe about 10 miles wide. So this marsh extends down this way a long, long way, and this way a long, long way. It's quite unusual, actually, to see these kind of wetlands on the coast, because north of here, in Alaska, it's mostly rocky shoreline, and here in British Columbia, it's also rocky. But when you get to the southern end of British Columbia, we find Boundary Bay. And that's why this wetland is so important. It's rare here on the coast. There's lots of rocky places, but this one is soft and muddy, and it attracts a lot of birds. Now, one of the reasons that this is so important for birds is not only that it's rare, but because of all the food that's here. And this is one thing that Lynn was just talking about, all the invertebrates, all the things that are growing here. And as this tide comes up, each time it comes up, it's bringing nutrients with it. And it's feeding this wetland. And every time those plants die and break down, they're providing food for all those invertebrates, all those little amphipods and all the little worms that are here in the mud. And those then provide the food for all the birds and the fish that are here. It's because of these changing levels of tide that make this such an important place. And that's how it functions, that's how it works. These plants that are living here, of course, they're adapted to this site. It means they live here, and this is the only place they live. Not only is it important for birds, as we've talked about, and all those worms and so on, but it's also important for fish. One of them being salmon, of course. When the salmon come out of the Fraser River, which is just north of us here, there are literally millions of them, and they need a place to go. They come into these wetlands and they use it as a nursery. It's a very important place for them. There's other fish too, lots more, and we'll have a look at them later, all the different ones that are here. If we think about just the birds that are here behind us, we can't see very much today. But there are thousands of birds just behind us, a little bit further out on this mudflat. Thousands of ducks that have come from Alaska. There's some of the geese that have come and flown in from Russia. There's hundreds of species that come down here. We have maybe 250 species just here in Boundary Bay. And they're going to the south, going down into South America, some of them going as far as Peru and Ecuador. And you think of this, that it's all linked together. Those birds nesting in Alaska, flying, landing in Boundary Bay, fueling up, getting the food here, and then flying on down into South America. It's really quite an amazing story. One last little bit I want to talk about is just on the mud itself. It just looks like mud, and it looks kind of goopy and so on. But there's a little surface thing called biofilm that's living on the surface, and we've just discovered that this is really important for these shorebirds. The shorebirds slurp them up with their bills, and they turn this into the fat, which allows them to make the migration. So this is really a critical piece in this food web, this biofilm that's just living on the surface. It looks stinky and muddy and all the rest, but it's actually really important for these birds. So this is one of the key things about these wetlands. It's this coastal movement of these tides coming in, the plants, all the animals, the invertebrates, the biofilm, all living together and creating this great place called Boundary Bay.
Thanks for that description. That was great, Rob. Thank you.